feel like everything I ever did up until becoming a successful pro wrestler was a disappointment or a mistake. I might be figuring this out. And as long as I don't put too much pressure on trying to figure that out and just go with the flow of things, I might figure this out at a faster rate than I expected. I grew up in a pretty rundown neighborhood. The first time I ever had a gun pulled out on me, I was 11 years old, and it was in the Central Market parking lot. I went to an elementary school that didn't have a lot of white kids in it. My mom's white, my dad's black, and my complexion's fairly light. And so I was picked on very heavily for being the only, air quote, white kid in the school. It was hard to deal with that while dealing with the things that I was dealing with at home, and one of my only escapes was my love for pro wrestling. And I remember I would bring my pro wrestler toys with me to school and use those as an escape from the worries that I had that were immediately around me. When I was a month old, my mother, she had gotten into some trouble that had resulted in a custody battle between her and my father that ended with my father having full custody of myself, my sister, and my brother Christian. My mother, she went to prison for the first 5 years of my life. I didn't meet her until I was 5 years old, and until I was 14 years old, she was in and out of my life. It's really, really tough to think about. Like, she carried me for 9 months and then dipped. One of the most natural bonds in the world for you didn't get to come true. So like, why wouldn't anything else just, up and leave either? I remember being like 6 and 7, 8, 9 years old. And I shared a room with my dad. On nights he wouldn't be there, my mind would go to the darkest places, and I would be so afraid that he wasn't coming home. And on those nights, I would go to my brother Buddha's room. He always would let me stay in his room for the night. He always made me feel like it was okay. He really reassured me that my dad wasn't gonna go anywhere. And then I lost him. That's the most fucked up day of my life. I've never been so hurt in my entire life. That's against the laws of the universe.
I think because their mother was out of the picture and they only had me, I could see now where he might have been insecure about it. But, I wasn't going anywhere. I didn't know he carried that weight. So.
My father's my best friend in the world. When I was a kid, my dad asked me if I ever saw myself having a family and stuff like that. And I told him that when I grew up, I was gonna become a pro wrestler and I was gonna buy the house next to his and live next to him for the rest of my life. And that is still the goal.
He always had action figures. Those were his heroes, wrestlers. I grew up wanting to be a pro baseball player, and then the reality hits you, you don't have the talent. But Trey was determined. Trey was gonna be a wrestler, He knew it from a very early age.
I dropped out of school when I was 15 years old. I completed my entire freshman year of high school. I spent 200 and some odd days being a try-hard every single day of my freshman year. And then coming out of my freshman year, I actually started training for pro wrestling.
He just loved wrestling. I knew it was a passion of his, so when he said he wanted to go to school, I knew I had to support him.
One of the things that draws people to pro wrestling is the fact that you get to get away from the real world in some ways, right? You get to go create a new version of you or a different version of you. And I think that that's, obviously one of the things that attracted Trey to professional wrestling.
Wrestling's gone through a number of metamorphoses. What had previously existed were very large, powerful, strength athletes presented as pro wrestlers. It became more athletic, it became more acrobatic, and the size gradually tick down more and more and more over the years, as it continues to do.
When I started wrestling, I remember my best friend Brent called me. He goes, dude, there's this dude on TV right now that looks just like you. And it was a promo with Amazing Red, Don West, and Kurt Angle. The match happened, and it was incredible. That was inspiring. That was really inspiring. At the same time, I become familiar with the Motor City Machine Guns. Watching those two, and then finding out that they were 50 minutes north of me, that made me feel like I was like, okay, I can get out of here. To see two guys do it as well and as hard as they did it, I knew I could do it too.
Wrestling, like so many other things, develops these little strongholds, and you have these clusters a lot of times of talent that breaks out.
I was starting to surround myself with the right people that things might actually start happening, and I knew I wasn't prepared for them. So I moved down to Dayton to start training full-time with Jake Christ and Sami Callihan.
I remember when he was still wearing baggy pleather white and black pants when I met him about 10 years ago, and seeing that evolution over the past 10 years, seeing him become one of the best high flyers, one of the best technical, one of the best all-around grounded wrestlers in the game today is something like, it really hits down deep with me.
Whether you lived in Dayton or just part of that Sami Callihan Dayton group, there was so much talent that just broke out from there.
The biggest challenge was getting out from under Des and Zach's shadow. Not a bad place to be, but when you want to stand on your own two legs, that became really hard.
To get your name out there, there's probably two factors that are more intrinsic than anything else, and it's sacrifice, maybe a little bit of obsession too. Most of the time, things aren't going to be handed to you. You have to go get them.
I was doing all of these road trips that I wasn't booked for and showing up to shows to just help set up and tear down. And then all it took was one time someone couldn't make it. And that was enough for them to want to see all of what I had. That didn't just happen overnight though. I had to do that various different places.
I'd known Trey since he was a teenager, and I had seen him develop as a wrestler and as a person. The 130-pound kid that I first met didn't belong in Impact Wrestling, but Trey put the work in the gym lifting, and he kept working on his in-ring. And a guy like Trey, young, athletic, and most importantly, innovative, was the exact kind of athlete that we needed.
I actually got my tryout, and I remember after the match laying on the floor, and I remember Johnny Bravo comes up to me and goes, "Good shit, kid. I think you just got yourself a job." And oh my God, when I got to tell my family that I signed to Impact Wrestling, that was what I felt like graduating high school was supposed to feel like. That was so cool.
I was very happy, very, very happy, because I knew it would, it would give him a steady paycheck, and it was like validation of all the things that he said he was going to do. And I think Impact's been very good for Trey.
That worked.
I definitely took notice of Trey being a part of the Rascals. I thought the Rascals were amazing. There was just three guys hanging out, having fun, getting stoned, laughing together, but they also loved wrestling.
My favorite part about being in the Rascals was doing these ridiculous tree houses. We would show up and think of, okay, let's not try to think of what's funny. Let's think of what's stupid.
One of the things you have to do is you need to get the fans to feel something. And what the Rascals had is they could make you laugh, because they were having so much fun, and that came through.
For a little bit of time, we just kind of showed how interchangeable that we could be as a trio. And we tried to use every opportunity to show that no matter how you booked us, that we could be entertaining and we could be diverse.
They're the ultimate representation of what this newest generation of wrestling is. It's kind of like just the next step in the evolution of where wrestling is going.
It's the farewell to the Rascals here on Impact Wrestling.
I hated that day.
This is what these guys do. If you follow them on social media, there isn't a night of the week that these guys aren't inside a ring doing things like this.
When the split happened, when Des and Zach left and Trey ended up staying, I think he was forced to outgrow it.
If you're used to operating in a team environment, to go from a team environment to singles matches is very, very different, and I can speak from experience, very intimidating in a lot of ways.
When the match was over, that was the hardest part. Those are my brothers. And after losing Buddha, it felt a little too close to that.
That's the last time that they perform here together at Impact Wrestling.
One of the things that this generation has to deal with that my generation and previous generations didn't have to was the constant, overwhelming assault of opinions.
I wasn't ready for the idea of a worldly opinion about me. When you're on the independents, you know, like, there's only X amount of people that will form an opinion about you because only X amount of people are actually exposed to you, but now you're on television.
I think there's a lot of times where people will type something out on their phone or their computer that they would never look at somebody in the face and say. People don't consider that there's a real person on the other end of that comment, and when they see that and read that, it can have a real effect on them.
I would read the comparisons and the comments and the things that people would say, and I was just, it's like, this makes me feel like I'm no better than I was when I was doing the independence and trying to convince myself that I was ready for this. And then you start telling yourself that you aren't, and that's a bitch. There was a lot of uncertainty, but this is where Alex Shelley became one of the most instrumental influences in my life, because I was ready to quit. I was ready 1000%. I was done. I had a backup plan. I was ready to go pursue that. And when I expressed that to Shelley, he said, nope. Nah, man, that's not the way.
I think these bonds happen in pro wrestling because the level of intimacy is just that much higher. You don't have to be friends with these people. They're your coworkers on a superficial level. Sometimes you just gravitate towards another human being and you develop a bond and you share these experiences, and you all share the same struggles to a point.
Aside from saving my wrestling career, he saved my mental health. Wanting to quit wrestling came from being mentally unhealthy, you know?
The depression and anxiety he had, the successes he had, I had those. And I've been there.
I didn't realize how much just talking about it actually does help. Talking about the small thoughts. The small ones are the ones that pile up and really put your head in the dark places. And Shelley was there to make me feel like I could talk about these things without being judged or looked at with a side eye. And Shelley did that for me.
I didn't want him to go through the same things I did. We're like, you love wrestling so goddamn much, and you feel like it just hates you. And I didn't want him to go through what I went through with anxiety and depression. So if I could help him avoid some of that pain and some of that heartache, I felt like I had to. I guess because I see myself in him like a lot, but just couldn't let that happen to him because I know how shitty it felt. You know. Yeah.
When Shelley started training with me again, it made me as excited about wrestling as I was when I first got into it, because I was learning again. Finding that love after being in a place of wanting to quit, it felt like I was like being reborn. I don't know how I couldn't have not been saved by that. That was what I needed, when I needed it. Everyone and anyone can feel like a good source of gratification from teaching anyone anything.
I'm gonna leap left first, boom, and then this other one's coming right there, across my ankles. And it's gonna be way quicker. I mean, you gotta go from A, B, C, kind of like Van Damme.
See that light bulb go off in your head and give that to someone else. Like, that's what wrestling should be. It should be about paying it forward, and I think that's what brings the most gratification. I never thought that this would be a thing, but I'm really grateful to be a teacher now. It's one of my favorite parts about pro wrestling is teaching people to do it.
I've been lucky enough to see Trey Miguel mature over just the past 3 years. I've known him longer than that, but especially in these past 3 years, I've seen Trey Miguel go from a boy with a dream to a man with a plan. It's awesome watching him take the steps that he needs to better himself, and the sky's the limit for him.
I feel so anxious. I'm ready to go. I live for this shit. This is like prom night.
I was standing ringside not 10 minutes ago, and Trey was just jumping around the ring doing things that I could never dream of doing, like things that would seem impossible, he does effortlessly.
I watched the other day in practice, Trey Miguel stand on the top rope, take a back bump onto the top rope, and then try to land on his feet. Having the innovativeness to even think of that is nothing that would ever come up in my head.
Professional wrestling is extremely demanding. When you look at the style of professional wrestling that Trey Miguel's known for and that he's one of the leaders of, it puts exponentially more stress and more impact on the human body.
They call it high risk for a reason. Everything we do in the ring is high risk, but doing the dives to the floor, jumping over the guardrails, all that stuff is so taxing. And I've legit seen Trey, after matches, barely able to walk, using his suitcase as a crutch. So I know what he puts in it, myself included. Sometimes we both talk about how beat up we are and how it wasn't always like this.
I can barely lift my fucking leg to put this thing on.
I've seen this man before he went out there, barely able to stand up, but I know why he did it. He knows why he did it. It's because of all those people out there. He loves this, and it shows in his actions.
Luckily, we got a 6-man tonight, so there'll be an opportunity to take breathers and make sure my leg is okay. But if I said I wasn't at least a little bit worried, I'd be lying. This is pretty fucking painful.
He's gone from being the fun ha-ha guy to a guy who's really starting to tell stories in an innovative, athletic way. So the next step for him is, can he be one of the guys? I don't care how many cool moves you do, if you don't make them feel, that's not a lasting memory. And the cool move, without the emotional attachment, is gonna be forgotten. People remember moments, not moves.
I wish how he is in real life translates on the TV screen. There's just one thing missing that I don't know, that he has to figure it out.
Tapping into who he is and what he likes and what motivates him, not just in wrestling, not just athletically. I think if he can figure that out and continue to do it, then he's really gonna hit on all cylinders.
What he needs to do now, and he's starting to do, is work on the mental and emotional aspect of it. And if he can pull all that together, he can be one of the people who forms the style his generation's known for.
I would like to show people another side of me. I feel like there's an uneven scale of what I can offer. I just need the ball.
He should get progressively better every year because he's getting the reps in, but also because he's being put in new situations with new pressures. And it's one of those things where you either succeed or you don't. You either grow or you don't. Like any hardship in life, you come out of it stronger or you regress.
Wrestling's more than this fake thing that people make it out to be. It's so much deeper than that. It really is. And I think the realest thing in the world are feelings, and wrestling makes me feel more than anything else ever has, good and bad. Tonight is the start of something really big for me. But it's not like nervous or anxious or anything like that. It's like feeling alive. It really is. It feels like being in love. It feels like cuddling. It feels like arguing. It feels like all that. It feels like there's a fucking storm inside of my body right now. These are the days that don't feel real. So like trying to conjure up thoughts and feelings of, you know what I mean? Like it's really hard in moments like this because today just doesn't feel like it's actually happening. It's too much right now. That's what it is. It is too much.
The psychology of the match is understanding what the audience recognizes and being able to play into those favoritisms. They have a certain idea of how stories go. They understand certain moves and they will react to certain things. The psychology of the match is going into their heads, grabbing what they recognize, and then painting your own picture with those colors specifically.
That's the first time I've ever come back from a match and had the gorilla position clap. Thank you so much. And that just meant the world to me.
I might be figuring this out. And as long as I don't put too much pressure on trying to figure that out and just go with the flow of things, I might figure this out at a faster rate than I expected.
Mental health is crazy. Depression sucks, and there aren't enough moments like this to make up for the 364 other days that don't feel like this. If I only get this once a year, it's gotta be enough, because this is what I'm living for.
I've told this to hundreds of athletes. If you're looking for validation based off of what you do when the lights are on, it's never going to happen. But if this helps you find that within you, find who you are and feel confident and proud of who you are, then you can tackle any adversity, wrestling, life, no matter what, because your validation has to come from within inside.
I gotta give myself more credit. I really do. This entire experience has not only made me appreciate myself as a human being more, but as a wrestler. Doing this entire, this documentary's brought me closer to my father, actually. My father and I have started, opening cans that we never have before and digging into things that used to be uncomfortable conversations. Anything that ever elevates my relationship with my father means the most to me, because he's my everything. And tonight being the culmination of this project and finally capturing the X Division Championship back, how could I be in my head right now? I'm saying it out loud because I actually believe it, finally.
I think if you're a young athlete and you're looking at Trey Miguel as inspiration, let it be said that he never gave up. He went through a lot of very difficult trials. He came out of them better and stronger because he didn't quit.
I've learned some of life's hardest lessons through wrestling, I think. I've had some of my biggest ups, some of my lowest downs. He's the one that's been there every time anything's ever gone wrong and every time anything's gone right. I feel like everything I ever did up until becoming a successful pro wrestler was a disappointment or a mistake. I was aware of every time I've ever disappointed my father. And every time I've ever disappointed my father, I've never felt good about myself. I used to loathe coming downstairs from my room and having my dad ask if I had work that day, and now he asks if I'm on TV. That's the coolest thing in the world.
He does things that I just, I can't believe. Real people don't do this, but he did this, and it was like, it blew me away. God, that's my kid doing this, He's doing what he wanted to do. I'm proud of him, and I think he understands how lucky he is.
It's so cool that the one thing that I wanted to do more than anything in the world is what's made him most proud of me. It gave me that. That's the best thing it's ever going to give me. The money means nothing. The bonds are everything, but a proud father is the most.